I'm ready.
Today's conversation, I would say the overarching theme is courage. So, what happens when you stop waiting to feel ready and choose to act with courage? We're about to find out. Charlene Wheeless will help us take the moments that matter, own our own value without apology, and understand how empowering ourselves allows to empower others. As I told you, Charlene, I love that. This isn't just a leadership conversation, it's about how we choose to live. Charlene, welcome to the show.
Oh, and thank you, Kay. It's so nice to be here in conversation with you.
You have quite a story. You are a leadership strategist, executive coach, keynote speaker, and author of this amazing book, You Are Enough.
Mhm.
Um, so I can't wait to kick off our conversation. And as I said before we started recording, I'd like you just to give us a little bit of your very unique background.
Oh, sure. So I'll try to make this brief to the extent that I can. I grew up in Oakland, California, and I not the part that people like to say they're from. It's kind of the ghetto's ghetto. And to be quite frank, I grew up as a little black girl in the 60s and the late 60s and early 70s. And two things are clear when you grow up in a place like I did. One is that you're invisible, and two, that no one has any expectation of you. And so, in my family, I was the first one to even think about going to college. And I really only went to college because my best friend went to college. And so I thought, oh, well, if Kelly's going to college, I'm going to go to college too. I didn't really even know what it was. But you said that we're going to talk about courage, and there are two things that really define my life. I think my journey is courage and choice. And so I grew up in an abusive home as well. And my mother left my father when I was 7, and my brothers went with my father. I went with my mother. And we happened to rent a house from an Oakland Raiders football player. And one day he gave my mom tickets to a game. And I didn't really care about football. I didn't understand football, but my mother was a massive fan of the Oakland Raiders, which is still my team to this day. And while we were at the game, right before it started, the crowd kind of erupted, and I hear this noise and this music, and then all of a sudden, these beautiful women came onto the field, and they were gorgeous and glamorous and sparkly. And I was mesmerized at this point as a 10-year-old. I'm thinking, wow, this is something. And it hit me, they're not invisible, even the ones who had skin that looked like mine. So I decided then and there that I wasn't going to be invisible, that I could actually be somebody. And this is all going to come together and answer your question. And so when I was 12, I was in junior high school. I tried out for cheerleader because this was my moment to start this new life of mine. And I made it as the fourth alternate, which is like the participation trophy plus, right? I mean, I thought this was incredible. And I thought, I'm invisible again. What was I thinking? I mean, I still didn't have anybody telling me that I could be somebody. I had just decided I wanted to do this. Fast forward a couple of months, and the sponsor of the team moves me ahead of the other girls, and puts me on the team. And I asked her very innocently, I said, well, thank you, but why did you put me on the team? And she said, Charlene, you were one of the more talented girls out there, but you're black, and I thought you'd be a troublemaker. And I
Wow.
thought,
What a thing to hear as at that age.
at that age. And so, as she says, but now I see you're a nice little girl. And so I put you on the team. That sparked three things that had just impacted my life. One is I spent the next 40 years proving who I wasn't instead of who I was. Right. It also, while I didn't know it at the time, set in motion the importance of making a choice, because I could have just believed her that I'm black, I'm a troublemaker, and that's just how it is. Or I could choose to be something different. And I made that choice to be something different. And then the third thing was that I did use cheerleading as a way to break a cycle. And I went on to cheer in high school. I was an All American. I cheered in college. I cheered in the NFL. And that really helped me get the confidence to be seen and to own it. And so, I graduated from college. I started my career in corporate, and I guess the rest is history, right? I spent the next 33 years in corporate.
And we are going to talk about that.
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by the fact that even as a young girl,
Mm.
you chose courage. And,
Right.
some people can use the comment of, the coach of the cheerleading squad
Mhm.
as a reason to hold themselves down. And
Right.
so something inside you, so your book and your theme in your business and life
Mhm.
is proof that you said, "Oh yeah, I'll show you."
Right.
And cheerleading was your vehicle.
Mhm.
Um, and I know I was never a cheerleader. I've not flown it. It's athletic. It's tough.
Oh,
It's
it's
something to
tough.
be proud of. And just right down to putting on a happy face no matter how you're feeling.
Exactly. No matter whether or not you fall down, you get up and you finish that routine, period. And that's how it is in life. And that's how it is in business. No matter what happens, you get up, you put a smile on your face and you finish, and cheerleading is what taught me that.
That was your vehicle. That
Mhm.
reminds me, we are watching a show called Wrexham, and
Uh-huh.
it's are you familiar with that show?
Not that one. I know there are several out there, but I haven't seen that one.
There are
I know I have a
so
new show to watch.
there are so many shows, people recommend shows I've never heard of. This
Right.
one, Ryan Reynolds and
Mhm.
a gentleman named Rob McElhenney, who's
Mhm.
on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I've never
Oh,
seen that
okay.
show
Mhm.
because we don't have that streaming service, and we're like, "We
Right.
refuse." I can't.
Right.
But just last night was the culmination of the most recent season, and they lost at the end.
Yeah.
And Rob, he's changed his name to Rob Mack, probably because he's
Mhm.
tired of explaining the pronunciation. But
Right.
he said, okay, life has ups and it has downs. Your sentiment. You
Mhm.
get up and you do it again. There's no choice if you want to succeed. And also, success would not be as sweet if it was
Mhm.
guaranteed.
Well, you wouldn't even recognize it, right? Because it's just the way things are. So you
So
really wouldn't even recognize it.
So you work with organizations, and
Mhm.
as a Black woman, a woman alone being in
Mhm.
these boardrooms making decisions, how has that courage transferred? And what has been your philosophy and your framework for what you've done professionally?
Yeah, my life mantra, if you will, other than you are enough, because that's right in there, is choice, not chance, right? And you can make a choice or you can leave things to chance. And it's always better to make a choice. And what I tell people too is that if you're going to leave things to chance, just do it intentionally. If you want to say, well, I'm not going to make a choice, I'm just going to see what happens, do it intentionally. Don't default to chance and leave your future in other people's hands, right? It just may, and sometimes the choices you make may not be good for you, but just make them intentionally. And I'll give you an example just in business. And in when I started in corporate, it was very clear to me that nobody looked like me, right? Nobody in leadership looked like me for most of my career. I mean, it wasn't just the first 5 years, it was all 30 of them. And so you realize that you don't fit, right? And you think that not fitting is a bad thing, right? Because everything's about, well, oh, are they a culture fit? And so as I'm going through corporate, I just realized that I was in my career, I was becoming successful, but in a way I was leaving it to chance because I was leaving it in other people's hands. And a part of what happened with that then was I became who people told me I needed to be in order to be successful. So I made that choice. So it was intentional, even though in the end it was not the best choice for me. Because just like you say, in your book, Uncopyable Women, it's better not to fit in, right? It's better to be yourself. And so the price that I paid in becoming a C-suite executive in a $40 billion company was I gave up who I was in order to do it. Right. So, yes, I was successful. And yes, everything was beautiful on the outside. And everybody wanted the life that I had because it looked so good on the outside. And on the inside, I was diagnosed with cancer twice within 6 months. Right. On the
Yes, and I
inside.
wanna get to that, but I do wanna reflect on what you said, which I don't think I've heard it put that way. You
Mhm.
did, you became what was expected and
Yes.
fit yourself to that mold, which,
Mhm.
yes, in Uncopyable, you wanna stand out and you wanna be different,
Mhm.
but it took you a while to realize that, and we were talking before the recording about AI, and
Right.
AI is very copyable unless
Mhm.
you work with it. So
Right.
you as, you know, coming into your own and
Mhm.
realizing I'm different and that's a good thing
Right.
and succeeding, props to you. You're giving us
Mhm.
the highlights, but the day in, day out decisions and experiences and slaps in the face or whatever you got.
Right. Yeah, I don't mean this lightly, although it sounds like it is. It was hard. I mean, every single day was hard. And I'd love to be able to say that, when I turned 30, I owned who I was and it's just not true. It probably took me until I was maybe 45 or even approaching 50. And it's because I was exhausted. I was exhausted of trying to be who this person said I needed to be, who this person said I needed to be. And, I had curated being the perfect Black female executive, right? I knew when to speak up, when to fade into the background, how to make other people comfortable because I was in their presence. I knew how to shrink to make other people comfortable. It was just exhausting. And so I finally said, while I've always lived things on my terms, my husband says there's the world and then there's Charlene's world. I've always tried to own my identity, but it wasn't until I got sick that I realized how much of my identity I had given up.
So I was going to ask you, and it sounds like this might be the answer. Was there a turning point when you decided blank that? And
Yes.
was cancer what happened?
Mhm.
And I want to hear, I want you to share with
It-
everyone
it-
what that
yeah.
was like.
It was, so I was first diagnosed with uterine cancer. I had a hysterectomy, went back to work a week later. Okay. And
Okay. Don't
then
make people hate you.
right, right. Well, now here's the thing. I shouldn't have gone back to work. Right. But I took that as a sign of, toughness and pride. And I can tough it out. Right. And then within 6 months, I was diagnosed with advanced stage breast cancer. And that one knocked me down. Right. And my doctor said to me, she said, Charlene, I know you. I see you come in for checkups. When I'm not here, you're on your phone, you're texting, you're doing this, you're doing that. So I'm going to be really straight with you. If you work during your treatment, I don't think you'll live through it. And that I have two adult children, adult girls, and that hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I took her advice. Of course, I didn't think anybody died from breast cancer anymore. And boy, was I wrong because I've lost friends
Mm.
since then, during that time and since then. And my 7 month treatment turned into ultimately 5 years of treatment. And in the middle of it, I went back to work, but I wasn't the same person. And so what had happened in that process is it, work is an out of sight, out of mind place if you're gone long enough. And the title was stripped away, the influence was stripped away. I was just a woman in a hospital gown trying to live. Right. And I had to really come to terms with who am I without all of that stuff, the titles that I used to define me. And I went back to work as I was still figuring that out. And I was watching everything go on. And I was like, "Oh, no. I can't do this anymore." And I had someone on my staff was, I was standing in my office and I was looking at all this work around me that needed to be done. And a woman on my staff, my deputy, I asked her, I said, "This is a lot of work. Who does all this?" And she just looked at me and she said, "You do." And I said, "No, this is like a lot of work." And she goes, "Oh, no, this is you. This is your pace." And I realized not only did I not want to do it anymore, I didn't want to be her anymore. I didn't want to be the person that I had curated for 3 plus decades.
Okay, we got to expand on that.
But
You were a different person.
oh,
And
yes.
that's fascinating. And of course, you would never have wished for that.
Mhm.
Women listening, get your mammograms.
Yes,
As you
please.
said, it's you can die from breast cancer. There are a lot of
Mhm.
survivors. There are a lot of non-survivors.
Right.
But it did change you in a way that sounds like that part was for the better. And looking back at your life and saying, I'm not that person anymore, and I'm not gonna settle for that. I'm not gonna take
Mhm.
that. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
was a huge turning point.
Oh, it drew a bright line for me, and even when I then left corporate, at first I thought or left that job, I thought, "Oh, well, I want another corporate job. That's what I wanna do." And because that's what I know, and I never thought about not being in corporate. When people say when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to say, "Oh, I should have finished that project." I thought, "Oh, I'd be saying that." Right? Because that's how much I was just into the grind. And so it was just I was like, "Okay, I've got to rediscover who I am. It sounds trite, but what brings me joy? What do I want to do?" And I surprised myself when I decided to start my own business. It's not in communications. I've done communications and corporate affairs and crisis and reputation my whole life. And when I decided to start my own advisory business, I chose to stay away from communications and do something different. So it was a complete, I mean, it's not that far off from what I used to do, but it was a complete reinvention. It was kind of Charlene 2.0 or 3.0. I'm not sure what version we're on, but it changed everything. And even my girls would tell you because they've said to me as well, they've said, "You're a different person than you used to be." Yeah.
That's powerful, and you've got, like you say, daughters who are also watching you, looking to
Right.
you for
Mhm.
a role, as a role model, and so good for you. Uh,
Yeah, it's hard for me to ever say that cancer was a gift because I just wouldn't wish that on anybody. But what I am a woman of faith, and what my faith has and what God has led me to do as a result is absolutely a gift, right? And I am so thankful that I gained a completely different perspective because I was living within my life, but I wasn't living my life. And every day now, I know that I am. I'm living my life. And you just
yeah,
can't put a price on that.
and I'm sure it gave you a whole new appreciation for life. My mom passed from ovarian cancer.
Oh, I'm so
And then
sorry.
I know it was horrible and
Hmm.
it was long and drawn out. So then I was so nervous and freaked out that I also ended up having a
Hmm.
full hysterectomy. Um,
Right.
but even after the hysterectomy, which miraculously, it was all done robotically,
Right. Why, right.
like, okay, and before AI, there were still robots. During the surgery, they were testing the tissues so that
Hmm.
when I came out of surgery, they said, "You're cancer free." Or
Right. Oh,
I not
mhm,
cancer free. I shouldn't claim that because I didn't have
mhm,
cancer or cancer free. So, but even that tiny taste, I'd
mhm.
like to hear from you. How much more did you appreciate life? The leaves looking greener. I mean, just even thinking I might have cancer had it such an impact.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that can happen in your life that put you face to face with your own mortality, right? And for the longest time, I woke up thinking I was going to die, right? And every time I lost a friend, to cancer, that made it more real. When I was deemed cancer free, I had a chef come in once a week to help me figure out my menu, my foods, and what I needed to eat. During the time we were working together, she was diagnosed with cancer and died. And this was
Oh my.
all within 1 year. And so when you are constantly aware that your death could be imminent and that you had some responsibility in that, right?
Well, like you said, you brushed the first warning
Oh,
sign off. You're like, "Okay, I'm bigger than this," and you did beat it.
mhm,
I don't know if the 2 were related, but,
right. No,
um
they weren't related except for the fact that, you know, we all have cancer cells in our body. We all have different kinds of things in our body. And it's a
Mhm.
matter of, do you let your immune system weaken to the point that these things can take hold? And I'm not really talking about what you eat and whether you exercise or this. I'm talking about the stress we put ourselves under, the burdens that we carry that we don't talk about, everything as women, as for me as a Black woman, that you carry every single day, right? Those things contribute to your illness. There's another book out, Your Body Keeps Score, for every trauma, everything you have. And we think we've got it all under control. And, sometimes when I'm giving a talk, I'll tell people I was flying all over the world. I was meeting with, government officials in different countries. I was leading hundreds and then thousands of people. I was killing it. But actually it was killing me. And I wasn't listening.
It's
And so
ironic. Ironic and
Mhm.
as us as listeners, yeah, all of this matters. And,
Uh,
I even think, and of course I am post-menopausal now, but
Mhm.
sleeping is just such a challenge. But I really force myself to find ways to sleep because
Mhm.
that's when your body heals. So yes, it's hard. There's of course no way to measure that, but you're right.
Right.
Everything you've done, the
Mhm.
stress, your who knows your mindset and eating, exercising. I
Right.
suppose if you're a smoker, when my
Mhm.
mom passed, she had smoked off and on, very limited amount, but on her death certificate, the
Mhm.
doctor wrote the different causes. And he
Mhm.
said contributing causes may have
Right.
been smoking and
Mhm.
she was overweight, obesity. So there are things we can do, but
Right.
beyond that, like you said, just the mentality of
Mhm.
holding back the stress,
Oh,
doing the things that you are talking about. Something that we talked about that I'm
mhm.
fascinated by is 7 seconds of courage. And
Yeah.
of course, I
Yeah.
always like to get some real specifics that we can
Mhm.
do and take away. So I want you to share what you mean and how you
Yeah.
do that.
So I believe that you can actually do anything. You can begin to do anything to change your life with 7 seconds of courage. And what happens is when you first think about when, if you're in corporate and you want to speak up in that meeting and you need to say something, you have something to say, but all of a sudden the adrenaline comes up, you get a little heated, you get the cortisol rush. That's fear, right? Because now you're thinking, what if nobody responds? What if I say something stupid? Oh, I can't do that. I'm not that person. And it only takes 6 seconds for us to talk ourselves out of it, right? And if we push through, because those first seconds it's all biology, right? It's the fight or flight. It's all biology. Don't try to push that down. Just let it go. And on that 7th second, act, speak, move, do something, make your decision. And, when I was writing my book, and you've written a book, so you know that on the back of the book, who's getting people to endorse your book and this and that is really important. And I had decided that I wanted Alan Murray to read and comment on my book. And at that time, he was the CEO of Fortune magazine. And so I thought, we'd met a few times, but he meets a lot of people. So
Yes,
I
I'm
didn't,
sure.
so why would he really remember me? But I had his information, and so I sat down and I wrote the email about the book. And then I walked away, but then I came back and I read it and I said, okay, Charlene, 7 seconds. And I counted out the 6 seconds. And on the seventh second, I hit send, right? I just hit send. And all I did concentrated on that 6 seconds was just letting the fear fall away, right? I wasn't fighting it. I wasn't talking myself out of things. I was just let it fall away. And on that 7 second, I hit the button. And he responded 10 minutes later and said, I'd be more than happy to read your book. And he gave a great endorsement for my book. 7 seconds is all you need. That's it. Just count to six. And on seven, act. What's that saying? You don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step. That's all you have to do is take that first step. And here's the thing. If Alan had said no, I would have just been back to even,
And
right?
you probably didn't, like you said, you
I
didn't
didn't
expect him
expect
to
it.
say yes. That's
Oh,
another lesson is just what's the downside of asking?
yeah, I mean, it's like, you're going to look stupid. Well, okay. But who knows you're looking stupid? Everybody looks stupid sometimes. And
No exception. I don't look stupid sometimes. Ha ha. LOL. Sometimes I feel
yeah,
like
I don't
I
know.
look
I look
stupid.
back at some of my fashion choices when I
No,
was
right?
younger.
Yeah, I lived through the
You
80s.
know,
So,
but
well, that is
yeah.
so 7 seconds. So
Mhm.
instead of just letting things go, you're dialing into how you're feeling and you're saying,
Right.
this is okay. And
Mhm.
this is not going to stop me. And on number seven, and sometimes it's just really helpful to have a tool like that
Right.
instead of Nike saying, just do it. You're
Right.
saying, okay, these are the 7 seconds that mean sending the email or not
Mhm.
sending the emails,
Right.
asking for the sale
Mhm.
or not, asking for the promotion, standing up in the meeting and or making yourself heard, even if you others may think that you don't belong. So I like that tool of 7 seconds.
Yeah.
It just boils it down to
Mhm.
something really tangible.
And
So
I
I
use that all the time, actually, in my life. It's like, you only need 7 seconds. Just let the fear, don't fight it. Just let it fall away because now you're using your energy to fight your biology. Just be human. Just let it go away. And then you're calmer too. And then you just act. It takes
that
practice, but it's worth it.
It totally is. I love that, and that's a great way to almost end, but, you've given us so much, and I want to talk a little bit more about your book as we close out. It's fascinating, you tell stories, you're real, plus you give your philosophies are powerful.
Mhm.
So, number 1, I wanna recommend that book, and if you're
Mhm.
watching on YouTube, you can see the cover of the book. And so tell us a little bit about that and how people can not only buy the book, but connect
Mhm.
with you.
Sure, sure. So you can buy the book on Amazon, or you can buy it from me by contacting me. My email address is Charlene at charlenewheeless.com. And my website is charlenewheeless.com as well. So that's easy enough. The book, when I was coming up in my career, I would go to these sessions where there'd be a panel of women and they'd speak of accomplished women and they talk about succeeding. And they always made it sound so easy, and so I would leave thinking, well, it's me, right? It's just me. And as I evolved in my career, I said, oh no, it's not just me. And if I ever have the opportunity to write a book to tell the truth without sugarcoating it, I'm going to do it. And I at the same time, I was asking God, if I live through this, tell me what I'm supposed to do with it, if you let me live. And I woke up one day and said, I'm supposed to write this book. And the name of it, You Are Enough, is very intentional because we as women are constantly told that we're not enough. And if you hear it long enough, you begin to believe it. And if you believe it, you become it. And so you become this person who is chasing validation constantly. You don't become who you're supposed to be. And what I want women to know and people to know is you are already enough. You just have to start acting like it, right? Because just because someone says you're not enough, that's a them problem. That's not a you problem.
I like that. And yes, you are enough. I'm I guess when I hear and see the title, I almost think, well, why didn't somebody else think of that? It's just powerful. You are enough.
Right.
And as we talked before the recording,
Mhm.
so many women I talked to on the podcast
Mhm.
feel that imposter syndrome. So we all
Absolutely.
feel that pressure and that feeling that maybe we're not enough. So your book is
Right.
awesome. What else would you like people to do as far as your website? I'll put that link in
Mhm.
the show notes, of
Oh,
course.
okay. Great. Great. Thank
Charlene
you.
Wheeless, it's basically
Mhm.
how it sounds,
Right.
charlenewheeless.com. Are
Mhm.
there other things that you would encourage people to do?
Well, I'm also on LinkedIn. And so I am very real on LinkedIn. And, the other thing, if I were going to just give people some advice that I'd like to, aside from recognizing that you are enough and it's choice, not chance, that changes everything. And the other piece is find and use your voice, right? Your voice is one of the most powerful things you have, and don't get furious, get curious. So if something happens to you at work, you don't get that promotion, you get overlooked. Don't become furious and say, why was I overlooked? Why didn't I get that? Become curious and say, can you help me understand why this happened and not this? And you're going to get a completely different response. And that's owning your power. Owning your power is getting curious and not furious.
That's great advice. Thank
Mhm.
you for adding that. And
Of
thank you
course.
so much, Charlene. It's been
Mhm.
a pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate it.
Mm. Oh, thank you for having me here and being in conversation with you. I think we are like minded. Based on our books alone, I think we're like minded. And so it's been really nice to be here with you.
I'll leave